Hi, this is Anil and welcome to the video tutorial on Java programming. So in this tutorial, I'm going to teach you guys about the switch statement in Java. So the switch statement executes the statements based on the value of a variable or an expression. So in the previous tutorials, I have explained to you guys about the if and else. So if some condition was true, then we were executing some statements, and then again we were checking for some condition using the else if, and we were executing some statements, and similarly we can compare as many conditions that we want. So here we have another option which is called the switch statement, which allows us to execute the statements depending on some value of a variable or an expression. So if it is confusing, don't worry, when you see the example, it's going to be clear. So the first thing is, what is the syntax of this switch statement, or how to use this. So first we need to write the keyword switch and then a pair of parentheses, and between this parentheses we're going to write the value, or we're going to have the expression which is going to produce some value, and then we're going to have a pair of curly braces, and between these curly braces we can write the cases which contain the statements that will be executed if that case value matches with the value generated here. So we need to use the keyword case and then the value. This is going to be the possible match, and then we're going to have the colon and then the statements. And similarly, we can have as many case statements in our program. So we can have multiple case statements. And lastly, we're gonna have something called a default case, which will be executed if none of these case values matches with the value generated here in this switch condition. So if none of the cases matches, then the statements inside this default case will be executed. Alright, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate an example here. So let's say you're going to execute some statements depending on your friend's name. So let's create a string variable and let's call it as name. So we're going to initialize this variable later, and we're going to execute different statements for my different friends. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the switch statement, and then I'm going to switch on my friend's name. So the possible values here are my friend's name. So first we're going to have the case. Let's say my friend is Lakshmi Shah. Yeah, it's a bit different name, but he's my buddy. And then we're going to have the colon, and then we're going to have the statements that we're going to execute if this name variable contains Lakshmish. And then we're going to have the case, another case, and let's say if my friend is Anjali. So if my friend is Anjali, then we're going to execute the statements, the different statements. And similarly we're going to have another case, and let's say my friend is Srisha. And if my friend name is Srisha, then I'm going to execute the statements here. Alright, if my friend name contains any value other than these three values, then I want to execute some code. So at that time we can have the default block. So this default case will be executed if none of these case values matches with the value which is here, or the value which is generated from an expression. So we're going to have the default statements here. Alright, now let's say this name variable contains a value called Lakshmish. So at that time we're going to write the statements that we want to execute here. So I just want to say system.out.println, hey Lakshmish, what's up? Alright, now the next thing that we need to do is we need to add a break statement here. That's because once a case value will be matched, the statements inside that case will be executed, and if we don't have the break here, then the statements of the next case will be executed until it finishes with the switch. So that's why what we want to do is, if this case matches, then we want to execute the statements and then we want to come out of this switch. That's why we're gonna use the break. So I'm just gonna copy this and I'm gonna write for my friend Anjali, and I'm gonna say, hey Anjali, what's up, and you are so beautiful. Actually she is. And then we're gonna execute the statement for Srisha, and let's say, hey Srisha, what's up, you play well. He's a cricket player, so I'm gonna copy these statements and I'm gonna paste it here, and these statements will be executed if none of these case values match with the name that we're gonna have here. So I'm just gonna say, hey buddy, and then what's up. This will be executed as a default case, and we don't need to have the break statement here. That's because since this default statement is at the end, after executing the statements here, the control will automatically come out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna initialize this name with a value of Lakshmish, and okay, we need to change this one to capital S, actually string, and it's gonna be name here. Okay, we need to change our project complaints and JRE to 1.7. That's because the strings in switch is allowed from JRE 1.7. Just double click on that, and it's gonna resolve all the errors. And now we're gonna run this program, and we're gonna say it's gonna be, hey Lakshmish, what's up. So here what happened is our name variable contained a value Lakshmish, and we were switching to the value contained in this name variable, which is Lakshmish. So the first case is containing a value called Lakshmish, and that's why it is matched, and so the statements which are written inside this case Lakshmish is executed. And after that we have the break statement, and that's why the control came out of this switch statement, and if we had any statements here after this switch, then that will be executed. So let's say we're gonna change this one to Anjali, and let's run this. This time we're gonna execute, hey Anjali, what's up, and you're so beautiful. That's because now this name is containing the value Anjali, and this first case is containing Lakshmish, it does a match, and then the second case is containing Anjali, and it matches, and that's why the statements inside this case will be executed. Then we have the break, and that's why we're gonna come out. So similarly, if we have Srisha, then it's gonna print out, hey Srisha, what's up, and you play well. So here what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a value which is not in these three cases, and let's say Anil, and let's run this program. Now you guys can see, hey buddy, what's up. That's from this default case. That's because none of the case values that we have here is matched with the value which we have written inside this switch. So the next thing that I want you guys to teach you is the importance of this break statement here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change this one to Lakshmish, and I'm gonna remove the break statement which is inside the case Lakshmish. So I'm gonna run this program, and now you guys can see, hey Lakshmish, what's up, and then we have, hey Anjali, what's up, and you're so beautiful. That's because the first case will be matched because the name containing Lakshmish, and then the statements inside that case is executed. That's why we get, hey Lakshmish, what's up, and then we don't have the break statement. So the statements inside this switch will be continued to execute, and that's why it's going to execute the statements inside this case Anjali, and it executes, hey Anjali, what's up, and you're so beautiful. And then we have the break statement, and that's why the control will come out of this switch statement and continue to execute the other statements. So that's why we're going to use the break statements in our switch statements. Alright, the next thing is so here we can have a variable or a switch expression. For example, if we are using any variables called num1 and num2, then you guys can have an expression like num1 plus num2. But you need to make sure that when you use the expressions here, they should yield a value of a char or a byte or a short or a int or a string type. So if you have an expression or a variable here, then that should yield either a char or a byte or a short or a int or a string type. The floating point and the boolean types are not allowed inside this switch as the switch expression. And the next thing is, the values that we have here for these cases should be a constant expression, or it should be a constant value. For example, you can't have, let's say we have a variable called x, we can't have x plus 1, we can't have a variable here. So the value of this case must be an constant value. And the last thing is, this default case is optional, so if you want to use it, you guys can use it, or you guys can skip it. And it will be executed if none of the case values match with the switch expression. So this is it, guys. This is something about the switch statement in Java, which allows us to execute the statements depending on the value of an expression or depending on the value of a variable. So thank you for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe. If you guys have any doubt or any suggestion, don't hesitate to tell us, and I'm going to put the source code of this tutorial in my web blog, learningladeducation.blogspot.com. And once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.